Welcome back. We have already the iAttachments repository here that contains add async that add an attachment to the cosmosdb, and we have the get unused attachments, and we have the delete async that deletes only a single attachment, right? So when the user creates a new transaction, the user can upload multiple attachments. So basically in the DTO there is an array of attachments or an array of URLs. So to make sure that those attachments are valid and actually existing, we need to query those. So basically we need an endpoint, or we need a method or a function that actually takes an array of attachments or URLs and retrieve those attachments for us. This is the first thing. After the transaction is being submitted and finished successfully, we need to remove those attachments from this container because they will be referenced inside the transaction JSON document. So we don't care about them being stayed inside the attachments table or the attachments Cosmos container, because there is already an Azure function that will start every couple hours and remove them. So what we need to do is create a method that returns a collection of attachments, but by URLs. So I'd say here by URLs async, and here we pass a list of URLs just like that. Sorry, this is here. Then the second method that we already have delete async that deletes one by one. That's the one that's being used right now by the delete unused attachments function, and we said back then that this is not efficient and we need to implement something in Pulp. But that's what you're going to do right now. So what we will create another one that says delete patch async. So basically it's going to take a collection of attachments and then remove them all at once. So we'll learn how we can use the bulk operations in the Azure cosmosdb.NET SDK. That's great. Right now we added those methods here. We need to go to the Cosmos attachments repository, and right now let's create or implement those methods. So I will create here the first method, attachment get by URL async. Then we pass the URLs here. So first thing, of course, is the validation. We need to make sure that this one is not null and contains some attachments. New null exception, name of URLs. That's great. Right now we need to build the query, and okay, this query is right, but I'm going to write it because I will just do a tiny change. So it is select star from C, where c.url in, and here we will pass URLs as a parameters because we need to avoid any SQL injection. And here we can create a query definition, the query text with parameter, URL, and the URLs. So this one is being passed as an array, but actually when we pass them to the query, we cannot pass them like this. So we need the query to look like something like this, from C, where c.url in, like http, etc., .jpeg, then the same. So we need to combine all of them in one string. So we're going to say URLs as a string, and we say string.join. Here we go. Okay, but we don't need this. Okay, it's retrieving it with those. Okay, so Copilot did a good job because we could have added. So it went over each one, just selected, retrieve it in this shape that's adding this to the beginning and end of it, that's right, and then separate them by comma. So that's all right. So right now we have this URL as a string, then we pass this to the query. So right now we have this parameter. Okay, we get the container, that's good, and then after that we get the query result. So iterator equals container.get item query iterator. Then we say it's attachment, and we pass the query just like this. Something very simple. Now let's get the result. And here we check if result, yeah, .any, and return result.resource, else return enumerable.empty. So we don't return null. That's it. And right now everything is good. So it's very similar to what we have done earlier, but this one actually we doesn't care about paging here. So that's why we didn't check the continuation token or something like that, just because the attachments won't be long. Like, we are not going to allow the user to add more than 10 attachments, for example, for each one. So there's going to be not 1000. So that's why you don't need to care about having to check the continuation token and to check to get multiple pages in case there is any. So it's just basically build a query and then get the query string, build the query definition, set the parameters of the query, and then get the container, the iterator, check the result, and that's all what we need to do. That's regarding the get by URL as but URLs async. Right now we need to implement the bulk delete. So the bulk delete is going to be something similar for this one, but there is one thing we need to do, which is we need to go to where we have injected. If we go to the Minessa injection extensions, here we are adding the Azure Cosmos DB client. So we're just passing the connection string. What we need to pass to is the Cosmos DB Cosmos client options. So new Cosmos client options, or you can just say new directly in .NET 6 and 7. So here you need to pass allow bulk execution. You need to set this to true. So once we set that, we can leverage that feature. Okay, after setting this to true, right now, okay, so GitHub Copilot did a great job. So let me explain. He did it. Let me explain what GitHub Copilot has done exactly and how this process, how it happens in bulk. So here we have delete patch async. So it takes a collection, that's clear. Then we check for if it's empty, and of course we need to make sure that it is not empty, because if it is empty, or let's not through this object, let's just return if attachments.any, then just return. We don't care if there is nothing empty. Don't go and do all these operations. So it gets the container. Then what it does, here we say await delete item async. So we're executing this task. This one is a task and we are executing it, then await for the result. Here we don't do that. What we do is we create a collection of tasks and then we iterate over each attachment, and we, instead of awaiting for that task, we add this task into this tasks list. So we just do exactly as we have done here. You pass the attachment.attachment ID and the partitioning key. That's all what you have to do. And so this is all that. Maybe we can simplify it just a little bit better. So var delete task equals like that, and then here we add delete task. So whenever we run this task, like delete task dot run as start or something, so it's going to kick off. But we add all of them, and at the end we use the when all method. Basically this one will trigger all those tasks and wait for all of them until they finish. What Azure Cosmos DB, the Cosmos client, is going to do in this case, it's going to create like a patch of those operations and submit it at once. So that's very good. It has some let's say downsides, which is this will request more request units, so it's going to charge you a little bit more, but also some in those cases it's very good. So this one has two let's say edges. It's positive and negative at the same time. If you care about latency, this has a little bit more latency than executing it, them one by one, but here we don't care about the latency because we just want to finish them, and because they are not too much, like 10 or 15 attachments, so this is the worst case. So we are just good, and this is the best solution rather than going through, iterate over each one of them and deleting them one by one. So that's how you can execute some batch operations in Azure Cosmos DB, or bulk operations, sorry. And the same, if you want to add, for example, you can just do the same, like create item or replace. So whatever you do, this is how This is the way you add your operations to a tasks, then you wait for all the tasks, and you make sure to allow bulk execution set to true on the level of the Cosmos client when you initialize it, either in your dependency injection container or in your class directly. That's something simple and applicable, but as I've said, be careful. This thing has when you are doing operations that requires a very low latency and they are like happening frequently, this is not very the best solution. The other solution is like to go and create a stored procedure on the level of the database, like writing some JavaScript code. We are going to learn about that later. But for similar operations like this, the solution is very good, and it's much better than removing them one by one and then inside a for each. So this is all what we're gonna do for this session. In the next one, we're going to implement the update the update balance of the wallet, and only update the balance property. So we will see how to do that in the partial update in Azure Cosmos DB. So thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.